this is something that has been inspired just from what we were talking about when it comes to speaking to our needs
Mm.
and actually ways in which we can do that that's supportive to the environment and also supportive to ourselves.
Mm.
Obviously, not in a space of dysregulation. And when we're in that heightened triggered state, that would be when
Mhm.
we're tending to come back to
Mhm.
that moment of repair, that
Mhm.
moment of forgiveness. But I'm more referring to for those who are in a state in their lives, we're actually speaking to our needs and talking about these essential needs, how important they are to know that it's our birthright and we're allowed. That's sometimes a bit challenging to digest, that we're actually allowed to feel this. We're
Yeah.
allowed this in our life. How would we compassionately offer something to those people that are in need of knowing what it means to speak their needs?
Yeah. 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 Great question. And I think I would understand this. One way to understand this is as a wounding around power. So we can, one of the key wounds that we all experience as kids is wounds around power, times when we feel disempowered because we're told your needs don't count. You're just a child, or we don't need to hear what you've got to say right now, or no one in this family has enough spare capacity to take on any more drama. So I don't want to hear any of your distress right now. You need to
Mm,
shut that up. Your voice isn't welcome. Whatever, whatever,
mm,
whatever. Or love is going to be withdrawn if you don't make nice and play happy right now.
mm,
Um, it can either happen like that, where we feel disempowered, and another kind of wound that's around power is that we get falsely empowered, and this can be just as painful and damaging. Where parents, this happens a lot with single parents, will sort of treat their child like a partner, maybe,
mm,
and they might say things like, "Well, you understand me better than your mother or your father does," or I'm messed up, but you have a bright future ahead of you," or "You're my special one. You help me feel good again." And so now there's this sort of false empowerment that the child gets, where it's like, I'm in some way responsible for this person's well-being, or I'm in some way elevated above the status of my parent, and sort of put on a pedestal.
mm,
Um, Happens a lot with single mums, and if they have an only son, there's this kind of little prince archetype that can happen. It's like my little prince, he's my savior, he's my special child. He's much better than all the other silly men out there, or especially his father. But it's lonely on that pedestal. It's very lonely, and it's an inappropriate power that gets given to kids in that moment. And this is huge burden of, oh my God, now I have to act in a certain way so that mum or dad can carry on feeling like they
mm,
can invest their hopes in me, or that they can confide in me, or that I can carry on being their support. And that can be just as damaging to development and safety in the world, because we're
mm,
sort of, that child is being robbed of their childhood in that moment.
mm,
So this is just a long-winded way of saying wounds around power are some of the most fundamental and universal wounds that we have. And it's either the power gets taken away from me, the adults around me don't know how to share the power, or I'm being given too much power in a false way. It's not real power, but it's power that's being offered to me. It's a sort of a fake projection of power, and it becomes an isolating burden. I end up feeling lonely,
mm,
and like I'm responsible for everyone. I'm
mm,
parentified.
mm,
So if someone is having difficulty expressing their needs, we would think, okay, maybe this is a situation where there was some disempowerment going on in your family. Or it could be there was false empowerment. You were told you were the special one, you are the rock, you're my anchor. So that means now I'm like, okay, I better not say how devastatingly tiny and fragile I feel on the inside, because this adult's going to fall apart if I do that.
mm,
But either way, um, we want to help this person, this hypothetical person, understand that actually no relationship happens from a state of one down or one up. If I feel superior to other people, or if I feel inferior to other people, connection isn't really possible. And so the only sane and healthy kind of perspective that we can come from for developing healthy relationships with ourselves and with each other is that all the voices have to be welcome.
mm,
That's like that's the foundation. That's the first principle. All the voices must be welcome. And if we start from there, now there's ease and spaciousness, and
mm,
especially when we say all the voices are welcome and none of the voices are who you are.
mm.
None of the voices are who you are. They might be expressing a need, or they might be expressing a wound, or some past event that you had, or some conditioning. But in the end, they're not. None of the voices are who we are. The thoughts that flit through our head, or the impulses, or the urges, they're not. They're not. None of them capture the very center and essence of us. Um, but when we recognize it's actually necessary to give them space to speak, to be welcomed, and feel like they belong, and have expression, then maybe it's easier to start exploring. Okay, what would you say if you felt like you had the power to say that? If you had been able to in that moment express your needs, what would you say? How would you say it? And we start in a hypothetical way, um, and that takes us over the greatest hurdle, because the greatest hurdle is not usually speaking our needs to other people. The greatest hurdle is speaking our needs to ourselves. It's when we find it hard to express to other people, it's because we're not really giving ourselves permission. We're judging our needs as being weak or too much or inappropriate or whatever, incompetent, inefficient, immature. If I'm clear that I'm allowed to have this need, I'm allowed to be able to voice this distress. Now it becomes much less important whether this person actually hears me or not, because I know what I need. And if they hear me, great. If they don't, then
Mm,
it's clear I need to go elsewhere to get my needs met and my voice heard.
mhm, mm.
But it's that self-acceptance that's the biggest hurdle.
Mm. And it's beautiful, even connecting the two of the more we do that, the more we become, or
Yeah,
we're strengthening that internal guidance.
exactly.
Yeah.
And every time we do that, that young little fragment of ourselves who was told whatever you have to say is not welcome in
Mm,
some way, that it gets to come home. One of those
mhm,
parts come home.
mm,
In shamanic work, they talk about soul retrieval, and I think n- this might be what they're referring to. In a
mm,
very real way, we're retrieving parts of ourselves when we say, "Oh yeah, there is a part of me that's like that," and "Oh yeah, if I deepen into that
mm,
feeling, it takes me back to the memory of that time where I
mm,
had to suppress something, or I had to dissociate from something.
mm,
It is a fragment of myself coming home."
mm.